going live.
I'm going.
And we are live. 1 minute. Hey, everybody. I'm waiting for you guys to join me. Remember, this stream will be available to you as a video once it's done. Okay, so if you don't manage to catch it live today, then that's okay. We're talking about your truth is your medicine. I mean, your healer. Let me just see. Right, let's see here. Oh, someone sent a message. They're coming on. Michael, are you on there? Do you want to say hello, hello, hello? That's lovely. Oh, there we go. Hello, Michael. Nice to have you on. Hi. Michael helps me, guys, and he's great. Because I don't understand this tech stuff at all, okay? Very, very sad. But I got someone who does. So when we talk about your truth being your healer, what do I mean by that? Hi, Lisa. Nice to see you, darling. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to read a bit of my notes because I don't have a teleprompter. And, I like to try and just be natural off the cuff. So enjoy. So when we're diagnosed with an illness, let's just say for purposes of this video and this channel, let's say a mental illness. It could be anything. It could be a serious mental illness and it could be not so serious. Doesn't matter. But when we're diagnosed with something, we don't automatically accept that. And the reason we don't is because it can be quite a shock. So, for example, I'll say, we're going to look at, let me just tell you firstly, in this class, we're going to look at how to dig deep and find your truth. Because when you are brutally honest with yourself, that is when you're able to heal. And I'm going to explain why and how we do this. So first, turn off electronics. Here we go. So it's always difficult to accept a diagnosis, but I'm going to give you an example. So firstly, if you have a pen or crayons to draw, paper, that would be helpful. So you can jot some stuff down. Otherwise, as I say, you can always come back to this and do it yourself, later. So let's say I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, right? And at first, it's a shock. What is that? Do you know how few people understand or know what bipolar disorder is? This is fact. What I'm telling you. This is part of my example, but it's also fact. Very few people know what the heck bipolar disorder means. Scary. And I found this out when I did like a sort of little survey and asked people, do you know what bipolar disorder is? 99% of them, no, what is that? Which is quite that. I think that's where our stigma comes in a lot, guys. So let's say I've been diagnosed with bipolar and I feel a bit shaken. I don't understand what the disorder means. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my life? The psychiatrist will explain it to me, but that doesn't automatically mean I will accept or understand the explanation, right? And then I might go back and volume is low. Thank you, darling. Let me turn it up. And let's go louder. How's that? Better? Let me know, Lisa, if you can hear me. Not better. Oh, dear. Now, I love these live streams. Not. Why is my volume low? Michael can hear clearly. Lisa? Maybe your phone needs to be turned up, hun. Thanks, Michael. Okay. So whatever your diagnosis is, and for, as I said, for the purposes of this channel, which is surrounding mental illness, I'm going to use this example. So I get diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I don't know what that means. And suddenly I can hear you, but volume is low. I'm sorry, guys. Lisa's saying she can hear me, but the volume is low. Silverman, hi, nice to have you. But Michael, am I clear? Silver Moon, can you hear me, hon? Is the volume very low? Oh, Michael says it's loud enough on his end. He's in what country again? Ah, Lisa says better. That's good. Tell me where you guys are from. I know Lisa's from Florida. Michael's from Africa. Yeah. And where are you, Silver Moon? It doesn't matter. Let me keep going. So what am I going to do now? I want to know why. We all do. Why have I got this? Oh, cool. I can hear you fine. You're all making friends. Good. Nice. Lisa and Michael. So then you want to know, well, why? Why have I been diagnosed? What is wrong with me? How did this happen? What happened? Bipolar disorder. So then no one likes to be diagnosed with an illness, whether it's physical or mental. It's very, very hard. Central England. Yay. Hi. So it's a good time for England. It's a bad time for the States. Sorry, but I tried to change this to 4 o'clock this afternoon, but I told you I'm a geek when it comes to this stuff. So anyhow, nobody wants to be diagnosed with something. It's not exactly pleasant, let's be honest, all right? But mental illness is just so rife, and we've got stuff like, let's say, depression. Bipolar carries a lot of depression. So let's work with that thing. So what I'm going to do, I cannot deny the existence of the bipolar disorder because that's what I have. So I can't pretend I don't have it because I do have it. But now I want to know why. Why have I got this disorder? It's the same as if you get diagnosed with kidney stones. Many people get kidney stones, but you want to know why. What happened? That's a normal thing for people to want to know. So this is where you get brutally honest with yourself, because we are talking about mental illness, okay? And this is why the reason I'm doing this class is because I believe that we are our best healers. We really are, but we've forgotten that. And we've handed our power out to the doctors or to a deity or to something else. We just kind of we don't think we're strong. So, but you are strong. So what do we do day one? This is how we do it. Day one, I want you to, if you want to do this exercise, that's up to you. So on your first day, you're going to take your paper, your pen, and your crayons in case you want to draw stuff. It's sometimes nice to just draw. If you're feeling really annoyed about something that you remember, you just make that sun black, just like that. So you go back to the beginning. This is the most difficult part because it can be very uncomfortable. You have to go back to your childhood. Now, those of you who follow this channel know that I am not a big proponent of that. I don't believe in going back and back, but in order to find the parts of you that are traumatized, that are not well, we have to find the source. Where is this? Where is this septic tank sitting? Okay, so we'll go back. But you want to, because those are the traumatized parts of you is what you want to find. And it's almost like you've got a spider web. If you can imagine this, you've got a spider web in your brain and your heart, and you're pulling out pieces of truth from the spider web. Not easy, because we tend to keep everything up here. That's what we do as people. We don't journal because sometimes it can be difficult. it can be, I'm scared to journal because if I write something down, that makes it real. Well, that's the point. So you've got to summon your courage here and think back, because these kind of illnesses are linked to childhood trauma, mostly, largely, of one sort or another. And your trauma could be different to someone else's. It doesn't mean that they or you have it worse. Trauma is trauma, and it's very, very, very damaging on the child who's growing up. And of course, then we have this lifelong diagnosis, or two, how many you might have. A lot of them exist together, as you know. So let's say I go back, and you must only do this for 2 hours. So you don't write more than 2 hours, because otherwise your day is filled with all the misery, right? So if you have any questions, just ask me while I'm speaking. So for 2 hours, I'm going to sit quietly, and I'm going to think about what's the first thing that comes up for me when I was young. That hurts. That's an ouch. It's a little ouch. And for me, let's say neglected. I feel neglected. This is the example I'm giving you. So you'd write it like this. You would say, I was neglected as a child. You might have been abused. You might have been, whatever it might be, that's up to you, whatever your memory tells you, okay? But if you come across, before I continue, if you hit a memory that really unravels you, move away from it, because then you need someone to help you with it, like a close friend or a therapist or a counselor or someone who knows how to deal with trauma therapy. So trauma, so you get trauma therapy, shall I say. So you're going to write down, but now you're going to be subjective, which means you are allowed to feel incredibly sorry for yourself, right? You have every right to now be angry, mad, pissed off, sad. It's not fair. Yes, this is when you can be the victim, because you were a victim. So you want to write words down. Why was I neglected? That's how do we get to the truth, unless we ask questions. So we ask ourselves, well, why the heck did my mother neglect me? And you might write, well, how did it feel? Firstly, or secondly, you're going to write it down. Whichever order, doesn't matter. You might ask that question, and then you might say to yourself, well, how did I feel about being neglected? Now, this is where your truth, you've got to dig deep, and it's not easy, but it works a charm as we change how we're seeing it, which is what I'm going to take you through. So you want to say, how do I honestly feel about this? Because many of us have moved on, and we've got these disorders, and they sit with us for life. And we can't heal. We just don't heal because we don't want to look at them. And we've got everything upstairs, and we think we know it all, but actually no. When you write it down, you'll find a very different story unfolds in front of your eyes. So how do I honestly feel about this? You can write that down. How do I feel? Damn, I'm angry, right? And you can write things, for example, I was hurt deeply. You can write, it made me feel inadequate, being neglected. Made me feel unwanted, unloved. It made me feel like I didn't belong and I wasn't wanted. Or what, did I just sort of land up? Did the zygote fairy just drop me into her lap and I shouldn't be here? How do I feel? So when you've written how you honestly feel about it, and that's in big, bold letters, let your brain read in big, bold letters how you feel. So I feel this, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel distressed. All of these feelings are very important to acknowledge, because they all form part of what we finally come out as, form part of who we are. But it's getting to the why. It's getting to understanding that these parts, why was I neglected? Okay, that's where your healing comes in. When you then look at it, so the next day you can look at it, or the same day, depending on how you're feeling. But don't spend more than about 2 hours, guys, because it can do your head in. It can be too hectic, all right? So now you're looking at it from, when I say subjectively, you know what I mean, right? So you can feel sorry for yourself, and so you should. And you can rub yourself like this, and so you should. And you can cry if you want to, and so you should. Let it out, all right? You don't have to be a big, strong anything when you are getting to the truth of it. So then you might want to write down, why was my mother neglectful? Why was I neglected? Then you might decide, you don't know why, but whatever comes to your brain. So maybe you decide she was just a shitty mother. Maybe, right? Or maybe she wasn't there. You know, she just disappeared, whatever the situation was. But that's getting to your why. Was I neglected? What does make sense to me? And it's not for anyone else to read. So you know that this is between you, your journal, your heart, and your mind. So it's not for others to say, oh, nonsense, that's not true. It didn't happen that way, blah, 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 blah. Because yes, it did, actually. And you can write down, did I deserve what happened to me? Because you're taking your brain on a little forest walk. Let's put it that way. So you're writing this down because if you try and keep it up here, there's too much going on. It's scrambled. It's like a racetrack. So did I deserve it? No. But then why did that happen to me? I mean, think of questions like that. So you might think, why again, again, again? Then you can come to a conclusion and decide. So let's say for this example, we decide, did I deserve what happened to me? The truth? No. No child deserves to be abandoned or neglected or abused or whatever. Children are supposed to be taken care of, loved, and adored, actually, and made to feel worthy. And that's so important because when we're born wired for attachment. And if we don't get that, then we start getting these trauma illnesses that hit us. So were you old enough maybe to find someone else to care for you? So we're searching for answers. Could I, have done that? Well, no, you weren't. So that's all out the window. You neglected, not your fault, but now why? So we've decided, okay, it doesn't make sense to me. So let's say she's a shitty mother. And oh my God, I've never said that before. How could I say that about my mother? Well, there's loads of shitty mothers, and there's loads of shitty fathers, and there's loads of shitty people. It just is how it is. And that's when you can allow yourself to think about the rest of the world, all right? When you come to your conclusion, and for my example, she was a shitty mother. That's it. She was just a shitty mother, and I don't feel sorry for her. No, I don't. I was the child. Remember, you are talking about your child self. So maybe now you've made friends. Oh, joy. But have you really made friends? I mean, have you fixed all of the hurt? That's up to you. So here are 6 points that you can use, which will help you to get to your truth and then understand. Now, before you look at these points, I want you to look back on what you've written, but now you look at it as an observer, like with stoicism. So you don't put any emotion into it, if you can possibly do that. When you get to that point where you can not put emotion, because, we get emotional about stuff and then we remain emotional, keeps you the victim. It doesn't matter what happened, but if you remain emotional about it, you remain the victim. So we don't want to do that. So we start looking at it objectively, as if you're observing someone else who was neglected as a child who now has a mental illness, right? You can take interest in it. So look at it objectively. So it can't hurt you anymore. That's once you've gone through the process where it's subjective. Do you know what I mean? I hope I'm making sense here. Am I making sense, guys? Let me know if I'm making sense. You know, because I can rattle on and often I don't make sense. So sorry about that. Hello. So here are 6 points, okay, to help you. This will empower you. Oh, thanks, Lisa. Yes, I'm making sense. Right. You need to be empowered in the face of a diagnosis, right? You do. Doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. You are not victim to your diagnosis. You are victim to what happened to you. Your diagnosis is a result of what happened to you. So being angry or sad or mad or however you're feeling, it's all absolutely acceptable. Remember that. There's no right or wrong. So validation and empowerment. When you're sitting quietly, you can open up to your truth. And I'm reading this out to you because I wrote my notes up because that's what I do, so I don't stumble. Right? You're going to feel validated just by understanding the connection between this disorder and the why. You get to the why, okay? And you'll acknowledge the pain. This is very important, to acknowledge the pain. So at first, you're going to feel the pain and the emotions that lie behind the truth. Because we can all fool ourselves and say, oh, you know, my mother tried her best, but she just couldn't cope. And my father tried his best, but it wasn't his fault. He was an alcoholic. And we make excuses for these people who have hurt us. Not a good idea, right? It's fine. No one says blame anybody, but it's important to let it go. But in order to let it go, you need to understand it. You need to understand what is going on. So you'll feel validated just by opening up to your truth. And validation is important because you want to feel you're not just inventing stuff. This is real. This stuff is real, okay? And you acknowledge the pain and emotions. Validation is a crucial step towards healing because it helps you recognize the legitimacy of your emotions and our experiences. So when you are honest, it validates the feelings that you have that lie behind that truth. And when that happens, you feel empowered. You feel a great sense of empowerment. And I have gone through this kind of thing with others, and that's why I'm doing it today, because I know how well it works. So then we integrate the past and the present. Owning the truth is not only about acknowledging the past traumas or experiences, but also about integrating them into your present. Now, that might sound really strange. You might think, oh, Deborah, seriously, I was flipping neglected. Now I must, bring it in? Yeah, let's talk about it. It's integrating it into your present, because when you articulate your truth, so you talk about it, you gain a deeper understanding of yourself and the impact that your past has had on your present behaviors and your beliefs. So your whole belief system could be based around your past. So now that's why it's coming into your present, because today I believe this and this and this, but maybe if I look at this differently, I might have a different outlook, if you know what I mean. So it's very important to articulate your truth. then you will find you have an awareness. Suddenly there's like an aha button. I don't know if that's ever happened with you guys. Let me know. It's when you click on something that makes sense and it's kind of, okay, that kind of makes sense to me. So you want to do that. And you can you can break free from destructive patterns and embrace a more authentic and fulfilling life. So if you've diagnosed, let's say, our example is bipolar disorder. The destructive patterns would be to continuously shop with money you don't have. The destructive patterns could be to go into relationships all the time that are no good for you. The distraction, it could be addictions. Bipolar carries a heck of a lot of various comorbid stuff with it. So we're not going to talk about that, but you need to bring it into your present so that you can break your destructive patterns. We all have them somewhere or other. So you want to write down, what is my destructive pattern? What am I doing to myself to kind of shoot myself in the foot? Does that make sense? Like, what am I doing with my life and with myself and with people around me that I care about? What am I actually doing? Because all of it boils down to what you've been subject to as a kid. And now, if you're still subject to it, as in this is your truth now. Okay, I had the worst childhood in the history of mankind. And well, if you keep that as your truth, then you can't get out of that little cage of hell. By validating it, what you're doing, you're bringing your past into your present and saying, I am empowered now. I get this, but this hasn't got me. So I might have bipolar disorder, but that doesn't rule me, right? It doesn't dictate what my life will be. And so that's where we come with destructive patterns, and we can embrace a more fulfilling life. And that's where you'll start moving just automatically. It happens organically. You'll start moving towards things that make you feel happy, things that make you feel good. And it doesn't mean you're going to have to earn millions. It doesn't mean anything like that. It means happiness. The story I put up on Facebook the other day, which I'll share with you, and that's this. If you are offered, and I'd love you guys to answer me in this chat, let me know. If you are offered a handful of gold, okay, or a handful of a lifetime of joy and happiness, which one are you going to choose? I'll give you a moment to decide. So I'm offering you a handful of gold that's worth a lot of millions. Thanks, Lisa says happiness. Absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. So if you want to think about that question, ask yourself, well, yeah, if someone offers me $1 billion or a lifetime of joy and happiness, but I can't have both. If you take the gold, happiness and joy and health is not promised to you at all, right? That's where that saying money can't buy happiness comes in. And it's absolutely true. We definitely need to have money as an energy, but we can't rely on money as our be all and end all, because it's just going to shoot us in the foot. So then we move on to the third point, which is authenticity and self-discovery. As you're finding your truth, you're embarking on a journey of self-discovery and authenticity. Truth-telling allows you to peel back the layers of societal expectations, which is so important, self-imposed limitations, and conditioned beliefs. And then when those layers are peeled back, then that reveals your true self. So what does society expect of me? Everyone expects something of me in that way. How do I show up for people? If you look at social media a lot, you'll see that there's a lot of problem with people trying to, and this is not a judgment call. There's a lot of people trying to be as handsome or as good looking or whatever as that person, and so they have this surgery and that done and that done. That all comes from feeling invalidated. Nobody would do that if they felt they belonged. You wouldn't do that if you were happy with yourself, because you wouldn't need to, unless you decided it might be fun. And I'll go and have my lips injected. I've had that done before. It was fun. I got addicted to it, to tell you the truth. And that was many, many years ago. But then I stopped. It was quite fun until I looked like a goldfish. Yes, that's sad. So you're now going to peel back the layers. The truth-telling allows you, I'm going to say it again, truth-telling allows you to peel back the layers of societal expectations, self-imposed limitations, which is what we do. We limit ourselves a lot because we've got this thing, I'm not good enough. I've got this disorder. I'm not clever enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. Well, yes, you actually are. You're more than enough. But when you tell the truth to yourself, it will show you that. So when you do that, and your conditioned beliefs, what I mean by that is what you get told as you're growing up. What are you taught in school? What do your parents teach you? All of that. This is all conditioning. And you might in your heart somehow feel, I don't feel that, let's take a religion. Okay. You might feel in your heart, my mother raised me with this religion, but I don't feel it really resonates with me. I'm just not feeling it, but yet I feel obliged to continue following it, but it's not making me very happy. These are conditioned beliefs. So you can start getting rid of them. You can start throwing them aside. And remember now, you're being objective about everything. You're being as stoic as you can, because that's the only way we can get to a healing part, is to say, that is what happened. Right. It is what it is, unfortunately. A lot of people don't like that saying, but that's an absolute truth. You also, when you tell the truth to yourself, you break your chains of shame and guilt. We all carry around these chains, these invisible chains of shame and guilt. We do. Truth has the power to liberate us from the chains of shame and guilt in the safe and non-judgmental, there's no judging here, in non-judgmental space of just you can open up and reveal hidden aspects of yourself. So there might be things about yourself that you've never told anybody, which is fine, but you might still be holding them up here, or still holding them in your heart, and they're still causing you harm. But when you write these things down as your truth, you take away their power. That's just how it works. I don't know why, but that is how it works. So you're looking at objectively. Then you're not going to share it with anybody. You know that you aren't alone. And this is where it's good to owning the truth releases the weight of your emotions. That's for sure it does. And it allows you to heal old wounds. And I shouldn't have to read my notes to you. It allows you to heal old wounds, integrate your experiences, and move forward with a sense of self-acceptance and compassion. Now, this is an interesting one, compassion. Self-acceptance and compassion. Compassion means courage, in other words. So you can move forward in your truth. Sorry about my hair, guys. It's a bit irritating. So I'm just being honest. You can move forward in your truth with self-compassion. That doesn't mean you are now going back to being subjective or being a victim of your shitty upbringing, right? That's the example we're using. What that means is that you have compassion for yourself. You have compassion for that child. And I'm not saying go back to the inner child and all that. There's thousands of people who do that. But there's a lot to be said for going back to what the heck went wrong? What happened? Why? And then owning it and feeling validated and saying, well, this is not my fault. To yourself. Is it my fault that I have bipolar disorder, or that I have non-treatment resistant depression, or that I just can't get out of bed sometimes for days? Is it my fault? This is a very big one, guys. Because if you are blaming yourself, you can't get past it. So don't blame yourself. Just always say to yourself, it's okay. I'm allowed to do this with self-compassion. So it's not self-pity, it's self-compassion, which means courage. It takes a lot of courage to feel compassionate towards yourself. We're compassionate towards others, aren't we? We're very compassionate towards the neighbor whose dog got run over, and we're very compassionate towards the lady down the street who lives alone, and we're very compassionate towards but how compassionate are you towards yourself? And that's what you've got to look at, because it's so, I cannot stress how important it is to feel self-compassion. It's really important. And it empowers you. It doesn't make you a victim. Very often we block out our traumas because we're afraid that if we face them, we are victim to them. But the opposite is true. When you face them, you take away their power, because you're not going to go back and back and back. You're going to go back once. You're only going to do it once. And for each time when you're doing this, every memory, so you're going to do it one memory by one memory, not a whole lot. So the first memory that comes to you that you feel, whoa, okay, that made me hurt as a child. That's the one you choose. When you've worked with that one and you've gone through what I've told you, what I've explained to you, then you go on to your next one. And so you start pulling apart, coming out of the spider's web, everything that you're feeling that's hurting you. And you then going to write it, and then you're going to look at it objectively, as if, okay, so that happened to me, all right. I have self-compassion. Yes, I do. And I'm going to move forward. This is what's happened, but I am not beholden to have to be or do or say anything to make anybody happy. I don't have to do that, because very often when you've come from a difficult childhood, we feel it's our job to be loving towards everyone else. And in doing that, that's great. But at the same time, what happens is we forget to love ourselves. So that's a problem. We have to love ourselves in a healthy way. And a lot of people think, oh, well, if I love myself, then I must be a narcissist. Well, that is not true at all. Okay. A narcissist is someone who loves themselves only and nobody else. There's a big difference, plus 100 other problems with it. So don't even think that way. Love yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and decide, I love you. Warts and all. Bipolar, depression, whatever it is, I love you. And that's hugely empowering. And instead of, your mind will then quickly pick up imperfections. Oh, well, my teeth aren't good enough, or I'm carrying a bit too much weight, or I'm this. Your mind is not your friend. Don't listen to it. Don't give it any oxygen, because it's not going to help you on this journey. So when your mind starts with that stuff, you could just let it pass and repeat again. I love you. And you're saying that to yourself. You're telling yourself, I love you. And so why it's important to heal emotional wounds. This is the 6th point. Unexpressed emotions cause us harm. And they cause us harm how? By sitting in the body and we get unwell. How do you determine the first truth? Okay. That's a good question. Thank you. When you first sit down quietly, and you must be sure that no one is going to phone you or call you, and you must really be alone. You close your eyes and just think back to your childhood. You don't have to go to what happened when I was 5 years old, or no. Just see yourself as a kid. It can be any age. How you determine the first truth is the first memory that knocks on your heart. So the first memory that knocks, and it comes as a feeling. So that first memory could be, as I say, I was neglected. That's your first truth. Now let's say you were also abused, right? That's a very good question, Lisa. How do you determine the first truth? That's your first memory. And you're going to go through all of that. But now let's say you neglected and you were abused. So now you've got 2 situations here. Once you've dealt with the neglected parts of yourself and you've written it down and you've put a reason to it that makes sense to you, doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. And you've looked at it and you've taken it in, and now you're saying, all right, that's my truth. This is what happened. Unfortunately, millions of children fall victim to the zygote theory that just drops them into the laps of shitty mothers and caregivers or fathers or whatever. That happens, right? But then you can let it move on. Does that make sense to you? And then you will come to your second truth. So let's say your second truth is you were abused. You don't want to take both on at the same time. So let's say, if I can put it this way, Lisa, tell me if you understand it like this. When you are recalling, when you're young, and you're thinking about, okay, what happened to me as a kid? And a memory comes that says, all right, I was neglected and I was abused, right? And I'm hugely traumatized, right? The first one that comes up in your mind is your first truth. Then you take, once you've dealt with that, you take now the abused, and you go through the exact same steps. And you're going to write about it. You're going to say, I was abused. How do I honestly feel about that? Be honest. And this is where the truth is hard, because you know that saying, the truth hurts. It's true, because it is very difficult to dig down deep with yourself and be completely honest and authentic with yourself and say, I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve that. I couldn't stop that. I couldn't change that. But I can change my now, where I am now. Whatever that's done to me, that's what I can fix. How I'm perceiving the world. Does that make sense to you, Lisa? You're trying to make sense of all of this stuff. That's a good question. Generalized hurt, meaning my childhood hurt as a whole. That's when it's this big spider web. Okay. So Lisa says it's generalized hurt, like her childhood is just a big, messy pain in your heart, right? Okay. You got to split that apart. That's what I'm talking about. So you then start to separate the wheat from the chaff. So you've got to get to a specific memory. That's where it's difficult, because if you're feeling hurt as a kid, as a whole, there are many reasons for that. They all integrate. We all have it, but we don't know what they are. So we tend to just say, well, it's generally just hurt. It's not. There are things that are good and there are things that weren't good. And when you look at what wasn't good, it'll come up as either neglect or abuse or abandonment. Some kind of thing will come up. Then you'll find another thing. So as I was saying to you, if you go with, say, abused. Now, abuse comes in many forms, as you know. There's layers of abuse. It could have been physical. It could have been emotional abuse. It could have been whatever abuse. Abuse is abuse. So you want to then write down, I was abused. So if you were physically abused, let's say you got the crap beaten out of you every day, or worse, okay? That's really, really awful, abuse. So you want to write down then, I was emotionally and physically abused. Then you go through the questions again. Did I deserve that? No. Could I have changed that? At that age, could I have run away? Well, maybe not. And maybe you did run away, and then you decided to come back because there was nowhere else, there's nowhere to go. So Lisa says she gets, let me know, you other guys, let me know how you feel about this, because Lisa's really great. She's chatting nicely here. Straight up fear and shyness for me. Lisa, do you feel that when you're thinking of when you're little? Do you feel fear and shyness? And remember, I mean, I don't have to mention your name. I can just say, you can write there, don't mention my name. I don't know. Okay. Then you look at fear. So for one of our party here, she feels just fear and then shyness. So now you've got to look at fear. What are you afraid of? So if you're afraid, let's look at fear. Why are you afraid? And shyness would integrate with fear simply because if you're afraid, you're not going to use your voice. You're not going to express yourself. You're not going to try and do things that are new that you've never done before because you feel you're shy, you don't feel validated. So when you start doing all these things and you validate yourself, that fear will go. But work out why. What am I afraid of? Ask yourself and just sit with it. You don't have to do anything or go anywhere or play any chanting music or anything. Just sit with it. And what am I afraid of? And allow your brain to tell you. Right, so you battled to communicate with friends and socialization was scary. Do you still feel that way today? Can be very tricky because when you're a child, if you've come from a less than okay family, you can feel very shy, you can feel very misplaced, and you don't want to mix with people too much because it's difficult. You know, your home life is not like theirs, and it's societal expectations. And as a child, you can't just say, well, screw you, this is what I'm going to do. As an adult now, you can, you see. That's the beauty of it. You can. So communicating was different. Difficult. So you're going to write that down, okay? Accept it. So you've now got your communicating with friends and socialization was scary. Right. You have that. There. Thank you. We have a truth. I blamed myself more than my parents. Thank you for sharing that truth. Now you've got to go back to the drawing board, right? And look at it today. If I ask you today, do you still blame yourself. Look back at the child. Do you still blame yourself? And if you do, there's got to be a very good reason. Why were you afraid? You didn't invent that. That happened as a result of, as a consequence of. That's not your fault. It's very, very important to get to, it was not my fault. I did not deserve it. That's when you're subjective. It's not my fault. Damn it, I didn't deserve this. It's all a load of rubbish. How the hell? What kind of parents do this? Let it all out. Go cray cray. Do it. Once you've written it down, pick it apart. How could I blame myself? It's a question that's being asked here. So, why do you blame yourself? Sit with it. And maybe it's your conditioning. Okay? I don't want to put thoughts into your head, but many of us were raised in various religions, right? And I'm not saying a word about religion. I'm not talking against or for religion, but many of us are raised with we were raised with some kind of religion, right? Some kind of belief system, and that we didn't choose. So our parents chose it for us, and obviously we just took it on because that's what we do as human beings. But what that might have done is left you with feelings of inadequacy and guilt and shame and so on. And I can say, and I hope if any of you are Catholic, I'm not knocking Catholic, that's fine, happy, fine. I'll just tell you this one story. There was a man, and there is a man actually, he's still very much alive, and he writes about the abuse he experienced at the hands of the Catholic Church. And he's really pissed, okay? He's not happy with this thing, and why should he be? So how can he blame himself for what happened to him? And unfortunately, with religion, there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of, I'm not good enough. Even if you go spiritual, you might think, well, I'm not enlightened because I'm not sitting quietly enough in a cave for 6 months, or because I'm eating the wrong food, or we'll make up all kinds of excuses. Well, maybe none of that even matters. Maybe it's got nothing to do with it. We tend to think, what is enlightenment? And we tend to think that's like this big, beautiful bolt of lightning that shoots across the sky and wow, you're lit up in flames. Well, no, not in flames, I mean in light. Sorry. That's not it. What it is understanding yourself and understanding what happened. Then I would say you are quite enlightened because you have a grip on what's going on. You're not just swimming in the dark, which is what you've been doing your whole life. And it's time to stop swimming in the dark and to come out and greet the sun. You know, that's basically how I can put it. So that's what I would say to you. You blamed yourself more than your parents, but you can see now how it couldn't be your fault. It couldn't. So you've got to remove that. And the way you remove that is by looking at it objectively, as if you tell me this, for example, or I tell you my story, and I say, but I blame myself. What would you tell me? Now, I'm a child, and I say, well, I was a child, and, you know, I think it was all my fault. You would probably say, no, how could it have been your fault? All right. So that's something you've got to get to. You've got to get to the validation of yourself, where you're not carrying the shame and the guilt, and it's not your fault. Exactly. It's not your fault. And it's okay to feel desperately sorry for yourself. You know, we are all having to be so brave in this world. We're all having to just try and keep up with everybody. But most of us are failing dismally because there's too much. There's an information overload, and everybody's doing something or other, and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm not good enough because I can't do that, because I can't do that, because none of it's true. Because what do I really want to do? That's what this is going to finally bring you to your truth and help you, whether you have bipolar, depression, borderline, whatever you've got. You find out your truth, and that empowers you and allows you to move forward without fear. Because I so understand that fear part, that I better not because they're going to laugh at me, or I better not because I'm going to let them down, and I better not because that's looking at it subjectively. But now you're going to be objective, and you're going to say, I actually will because I can, right? Yeah, we do create limitations. Thanks, Lisa. So we create limitations on ourselves, but that's because of your fear. Guys, we're not having a private chat here. I'm just sharing. Someone's writing in the chat box, which I love. Thank you, darling. And we do create limitations because we don't even create, actually. We limit ourselves from creating. Does that make sense to you? So instead of creating, like, I know that you do great art, for example. This is one of our tribe that's on here with us. But instead of creating, you have limited yourself because you're not sure if you're good enough. And that's why you go through all of this that I'm telling you. And once you've gone through all of it, then you will find there's a shift in you. There's a shift. And I can't tell you the scientific reason why that happens, but I do know that that happens. When you start looking at your childhood or your trauma, whenever it happened, it didn't have to happen when you were tiny. It could have happened in your teens. It doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma. And it's the result of the trauma is what actually happens. It's not the thing itself. So you end up, like Lisa was saying, she's a lot of shyness, a lot of fear comes up. That's because she's blamed herself and not so much her parents. That could be conditioning. You must respect your parents. You must do this, you must do that. Well, yeah, sure, but your parents must respect you too. It's a two-way street. It's not just, I'll show them all the respect in the world, and then they can treat me like a piece of dog turd. No, I don't think so. It doesn't work that way. So when you can't create, of course you love your parents. All right. That's okay. You can love your parents. There's no worry with that. But you need to work out what happened to you, how you feel about it. So you feel a lot of fear. Was it fair? We're not asking if you love your parents or not. As I said in the very beginning, this is not about telling yourself your parents should just go and rot. No, not at all. But it's about seeing their, let's say, I want to say something like frailties and their shortcomings, but not taking them on yourself. As in, well, Mom really tried her best, but this happened and that happened, so it must have been me. I must have been the difficult child, right? No. You could still love your parents. You don't have to not love your parents just because they were shitty parents. No, love is different. It's a completely different frequency. Well, okay. That's interesting. So Lisa says her mom was physically ill. So could she not take care of you, Lisa? This is like we're having a kind of what do you want to say? A counseling session here. So, and I love that you're being so brave, Lisa, to write these things down. My mom was physically ill, so she could not take proper care of you. Am I right? But then what part of her could take care of you, but didn't? So we're not looking, it might sound like I'm saying blame somebody. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the fault lies somewhere else. Okay, so she was there for me, Lisa says, but I was scared. What, were you scared of losing her? What were you scared of? Because that's quite a big one. If you grow up around a parent who's ill, okay, excellent, you got it. So if you grow up with a parent that's ill, your emotions are torn because and now you're being neglected because your mother's not well or your father's not well. I'm just going to say mother for the sake of this chat. You feel obligated. Yes, losing her, right. So you feel obligated to letting them behave or not behave in ways that they're supposed to as parents because they're ill. But now you're ill. So how does that work? No, it doesn't work. It's strange, but yeah, you're afraid of losing her. So what you've done, tell me if you think I'm right. Lisa says she was afraid of losing her mother because she grew up with fear and shyness and her mother was physically ill. Now, if that happened, you're afraid of losing her. That's normal for a child to feel that way. But why should that make you feel feelings of limitations? Life is scary. Because then it was. Yes, it was. Absolutely. As a kid, it must have been horrible. So you acknowledge that. Acknowledge that. It's not about not loving your parents. It's about finding things that happened to you and saying, that wasn't right. What that happened to me, that wasn't right. I didn't get dinner that every night I went to bed hungry. That wasn't right. Whether it's your mother's fault or not, we're getting to the truth of the it. We're not blaming anybody. We're getting to the bottom of the story, if that makes sense to you. So it's not about now deciding, okay, well, now I hate my parents, so now I'll be okay. Not at all. In fact, you can embrace your parents in your heart. Okay, Lisa says she thought she was always overly sensitive. Well, were you? Just ask yourself, was I really? Or maybe I had a right to be overly sensitive. Perhaps I was overly sensitive because, hell, my mother was really ill and she couldn't take good care of me. And so I kind of blame myself for that because maybe it's my fault that she was ill. And so I'm carrying a lot of guilt and shame and a lot of shyness and a lot of fear. Now, that can be let go because you can now see it wasn't your fault. There's nothing you could have done. If you did the best you could do when you were little, which we all do as children, we're born wired for attachment. Children will do almost anything to be loved and accepted. And that's where children who are sexually abused, it's so very sad, is they keep going back to their abuser. And people think, even adults who are abused in relationships, if a woman and a man have an abusive relationship and let's say the man beats her up. Okay, Lisa, we'll look at that. You wanted to make her proud of you. You did the best you can. Now you see how you're talking your truth, Lisa. You're saying you wanted her to be proud of you, but you did the best you could. That's good enough. That's good enough. So when we are in relationships where it's abusive, what we tend to do, until we realize that actually I don't belong in this relationship, This is not for me. I am worth more than this. I'm worth something. We go back to the abuser and back to the abuser. And so it keeps happening. Then you become afraid, and then because you get threatened, perhaps. And if you leave me, I'll find you and I'll, etc. And so or we might choose, well, just to keep the peace for the sake of the children, I will put up with being treated like this by this person, which is really bad. Because at the same time, then what you're doing is you're showing your children, it's fine to let your partner beat you up and call you names and be mean to you. That's what your children are seeing. So is that what you want? No, you don't want that at all. So now you're grown and you've got all the leftovers stuck in your body from all the traumas that you experienced when you're growing up. What do? You're either going to gravitate towards someone who's going to re-traumatize you because it's familiar territory. So you'll be drawn towards people who are ill or are physically not 100%, or you might go the opposite way completely, which is healthy. And that is where you decide you break the chain. You've got to break the legacy of pain. In everyone's family, it's important. I don't think there's a family on the planet, I don't think so, where there hasn't been pain, neglect, trauma, abandonment, perhaps. I don't think so. And we don't have to hold on to that. That's what this is all about. It's about finding the pain, looking at it, saying it out loud, and then letting it go. Because it is what it is. That's what happened. Can I change it? I can't change a kick or a kiss from yesterday and bring it into my today. It's not possible. That sounds so kind of blunt, I know that, but that is the best way I have found to solve these issues that surround us. Because, I mean, man, some people have it really crap. And it's all a perception. So you might have been abandoned and when you were young, and then a friend of yours was also abandoned. But the two of you are not going to feel the same way as adults. You're not going to have the same, whatever comes as a result, it's going to be very different. Because we perceive things our way, how we perceive things. And so it's absolutely fine. If your mom was physically unwell, that's fine. But whatever the trauma was, did she need to put that on you? So is it your fault? Of course it's not. Okay. So I'll just say no child is responsible for being abused or traumatized, not for any reason whatsoever. And if I could type this up here, I would. When you think of yourself and your situation back then, bring other kids. This is interesting exercise for you. Bring other kids into your consciousness. The millions of children who are being sex trafficked, who are being traded as slaves, who are being abused and traumatized. Just the other day in the news, a mother who was high on fentanyl starved her 7-year-old to death. That's the truth. I watched that and I was, whoa, I couldn't believe it. But it happens. It happens so often. And we don't know this because we're living in our own little nucleus, and we think, okay, so I was subject to that. And it's not about comparing it to other kids. It's about saying, I'm not alone. There are millions of others. Yes, your mom did the best she could do. That's great. But then, Lisa, you need to find why you had fear. Your fear of losing her, right? That's your fear. But you didn't lose her too early. And you can now release that. You can let it go. And I'm going to send you something on that one, okay? It'll help you. So you can think of all the other children in the world. This is the only time I'll say, think about others as well, because it helps your brain make sense of something that is just doesn't make sense. It's not right. And you'll think, when you think of thousands and millions of other children who have gone through or are going through similar to what you have, it makes you feel you're not alone. That's all it does. It's not about competing. It's not about saying, oh, well, it's fine because millions of children have it so hard. It's not at all. It's not fine. It's just to give yourself the comfort of knowing you're not the only person that has gone through this kind of hell. You are perceiving it differently. Oh, great, Lisa, that's great. Because everyone perceives the world and other people and other people's behavior. We all do it differently, don't we, guys? I mean, so you look at one person, what do they say? One man's meat is another man's poison. That's the truth. So somebody could be really attracted to you. Somebody else could say, what the hell are you attracted to her for? Or to him for? And it's all in our perception. That's what it is. And of course, there's chemical reactions and all that. But when you are, specifically, if you're looking at social media, just bring into mind, while you're going through this, bring into mind that you do not have to look like that particular influencer who's got millions of followers. Because break that down. Imagine how much work that person has to do in order to get so many followers. Is it worth it? Is that something I'd really like to do? So if I go and have surgery and then I have lift this thing done, the Nefertiti thing, and then I have my lips done, which, as I told you, I've done before, and then I go and put cheekbones in, and then I blah 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 blah, and I spend thousands, and then of course it all wears off after 6 months. But I might look really stupid as well, but I think I look great. And my family might say to me, or my friends might say, you don't look great. You look awful. It's your perception. And if you don't think you're good enough, if you don't think you're validated, if you don't think you're valid, let's say, you will do anything in order to feel that. That's what we do as people. We need to come together so badly that we will end up doing anything as long as we feel worthy. And very often that ends up in destructive behaviors, and we can't then stop them. Thanks, Lisa. We can't stop them. So what we do is we gravitate towards trying to be better. Let's say, let me give you another example. Let's say, I'm talking to someone who's a musician, and quite a few people on this channel are musicians, by the way. And you're all great. I have heard a lot of your music. And for those of you whose music I haven't heard, well, I'd love to hear it. Would you share it with me, please? You can do it privately on the members thingamajig, you know. You know how I speak. I can't get the word right. So let's say you are a musician and you love making music. But your mind has now told you since you were little, no, you can't do that very well. And now you look at social media where there's a musician who plays Mozart on the piano, and whereas you're stuck playing a few chords. And then you think to yourself, well, I'm pretty shitty at this. That's your first mistake. Because imagine if you were handed, let's put it this way, if you were a kid and you're starving hungry, and you're handed a piece of warm bread, just a slice of warm bread, you're going to make the most of that piece of bread. You might not have the whole loaf, but you're going to make the most of that piece of bread. So you're going to make the most of what you have. And if it really means a lot to you, if you want to be able to learn more chords and go get into it, go on to the internet and learn, because it's the best way to do it, because you're doing it for yourself. So very often we won't do that kind of thing because we think, I'm not worth it. I'm not worth giving myself the kind of love that I deserve, actually, to be a better musician, to know more about music. That is what you're saying to yourself. But that isn't true. So when you feel you're a valid person, you survive in the jungle by being smart. You didn't get to where you are now after going through everything you've gone through when you were younger because you're an idiot. No, not at all. And this is what we have to look at. We've got to look at the fact that I'm smart. I've survived. We're survivors. And I have a right, like that song, I have a right to be here. There we go. Lisa says, I admire great musicians. I understand. But Lisa, you don't have limitations, honey. You don't, because you can learn. So if you feel you've limited, for example, I like singing. And so I just sing, whether it's good or not, I don't care. I love it. I think it's great fun. And so Steph, one of the tribe members, she's a singer, and she's sung quite a lot of songs that we've kind of written together, and we've played around a bit. It's been quite fun on Spotify. But she was giving me singing lessons, and this was just so ridiculously, hilariously funny, because then we'd go on Zoom, and this is true, and then she would say, all right, you've got to start making I don't even think I can't actually do what she was telling me to do. It was like, you make noises, and then you do that, and it's like, oh my God. And I was looking at her and saying, are you serious? I'm going to do that? What? Because you're warming your voice up. So all singers do this. They warm their voice up, and they make funny sounds, and they do that. I didn't know that. But once she had told me that, yeah, exactly. You've got to sing from here, down here, baby, not here. That's what I learned from Steph. But it's not easy. But I'll tell you what is easy if you project your voice. So you sing loudly, then it comes from here. But if you sing very softly, it comes from here. And then you can't get it out. So, yeah, you've got to warm your voice up. So there are no limitations. There are none, unless you have a brain injury where you are unable to learn. So you know a chord, let's say C, G, and F, or you know a chord A, D, and G. Right? I'm saying these chords because I play the guitar. Okay. So all I know are those chords, and they normally go together well. So it would be, let's say I'm saying chord D, I'm pretending I'm playing. Okay, I'm going a bit mad here. D and F and D and G and then C. Those are the chords. Those are my three chords. That's all I can do. And that's all I can do. Well, I actually need to learn, because there's a song I heard that I really want to play, but I can't get that chord, that note that they hit. What the hell is that? I can't read music. And if I get the sheet of paper, yeah, I can see it says E major flat. What is that? Maybe you've got to watch somebody playing, like on YouTube, who's teaching, and learn. Oh, that's what that chord is. Because if you are a musician and you don't read music, so you can't read music, you train with your ears, you're self-taught. You can recreate any song you listen to in your own voice, in your way. You can do that without needing the music, without having to look at the sheet music. But you will find I'm sorry to hear that. Well, if your voice changed, Lisa says her thyroid was removed, so her voice changed because of that. Well, now you work with what you have. We're coming back to it is what it is. So you're working with what you have. And that's good enough. That's absolutely good enough. And when you really rest in that truth and that peace, you will find that making music, singing will come, it will come to you your way. So, and I can say this, I've heard this lady sing and she's great. Absolutely fine, nothing wrong with it. So you're worrying about nothing, check. Okay? So you must remember, guys, that you are the master of your kingdom. And nobody can rule you or make you do or say or be anything that you don't want to do or say. Nobody. And the days of conditioning and following the parents and following what they said and then doing that even though it doesn't feel right, and now I've got some mental disorder, which is normally the result, or a physical illness as well. Even if all of that, so you've got all of that, no, I'm here today. This is the whole thing, how your truth is your healer, because you come back to your today, where you are now. So if you are 60 years of age, perhaps you've carried trauma for 60 years, 70 years, or 40 years, or 30 years. That's a long time to carry trauma. What for? When you can let it go. You can make sense of it. You can then you can say, okay, I can't undo it, because you can't you know what I mean? You can't undo it. So it's done. But now you've got to move into acceptance. So this is what I've got. This is what I can work with. This is what I understand. And it's not about blaming anyone. It's about what happened. And if you want to say, oh, she did the best she could, or he did the best he could, that's fine. But they didn't do good enough, did they? Because otherwise you wouldn't have the problems that you've got. This trauma stores itself in our bodies, and it comes out in a myriad of ways, physically and mentally. There was a woman, I'll let you go with this story, because I've been talking to you now for, about an hour. There was a lady who was completely blind, and she didn't even, glasses wouldn't help her. She was blind. She had a cane and a blind dog. Blind, you know what I mean? Not a blind dog. I'm sorry. I mean, a guide dog you know what I'm saying, for people who are blind. You didn't have a blind dog. I am so sorry. I better have some water. Oh my word, this is so sad. Okay, but I always do that. I always tend to say things that that didn't sound quite right. What the hell? That's bad, but I don't mind, because it's part of who I am. What the hell to do? I'm not, I didn't mean she's a blind dog. I mean, she has a dog because she's blind. I think we're going to remember this forever. That's a song. Okay. I'm making that into a song, Lisa, just for you. All right. So dog wasn't blind. She was blind. But the truth is, she went on this course with a guy who teaches about your subconscious and the power of your subconscious mind, which is also the course that I've written that's available on Udemy, but I'm putting it actually up on my website. So I'll let you guys know when that happens. I've just been extremely busy. I haven't been able to do a damn thing for the past 3 months. It's ridiculous. And it hasn't been fun. No, it hasn't been fun. But all necessary. And this woman went to this guy, I think it was Joe De Silva. Joe De Silva. That's his name. So we've got Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's brilliant. He's on Gaia. But then we've got this other guy, De Silva. Well, anyway, it's mind control. So she started attending his workshops and to see if she could change, because they said that she can change herself, her fact that she's blind, by changing how she's using her subconscious mind. Okay. Within, I think I said it was 3 days. I'll stand on the correction there. It took a few weeks. I don't know the exact time it took. But basically, at the end of the day, she got her sight back. Now, people can say, oh, well, that's just a miracle. God blessed her. Or we can say, all right, they went on a specific journey to do this. They tapped into the subconscious mind, which is where your power lies. Not this mind that I'm talking with now that's just screwed up about the dog. Okay? And it's incredible, the changes that happen. You've just got to keep it up. You've got to just, when you're doing this work, you must believe in yourself. You must believe in what you're writing, even if you feel so awful. If you're feeling so awful that you just think, I don't want to write this anymore, it's irritating, and so I'm just not doing it. That's fine. You can come back another day. So you're learning self-acceptance. And you're learning it's okay if I don't want to do this. And so you keep going. And then you keep coming back to now. And you keep telling yourself, I am the master of my kingdom. Me. It's me. If I change a physical illness, or I manage to manifest a motor car that I want, or whatever it might be, that's me. I'm doing it. And if you are religious and you want to say, well, it's a blessing, Jesus came and did all this, that's okay. Whatever turns you on. What's important is that you get well. What's important is that or even if you don't get well, you get a modicum of being able to handle the disorder instead of the disorder handling you. So you're going to live your life the best way you can with whatever's happened to you, with an attitude of, okay, I get it now. I understand it. I can work with it. And I'm going to do part 2 of this, where we're going to go into the emotional side next week on Thursday. And it will be at 4 o'clock British time, because this thing made it 1 o'clock. And because I'm a little bit stupid when it comes to computers, and I shouldn't say that because I said we're not allowed to say nasty things about ourselves, but that's not nasty. That's just the truth. I don't understand. So we're going to be here at 4 o'clock. That's UK time. Next Thursday, I'll put it up for you guys. And we're going to go through the emotional. There's part 2, where there's an emotional side to this that has to be looked at. And if you guys want to, oh, thanks, Lisa. Great. And if you guys want to do this work and then ask questions next week, what I can do is at the end of what I'm presenting to you, you can ask me questions and I'll answer you. And if you don't want me to answer live, I'll just type like this. If my computer works in. See? So I can do that. And there we go. We can get to the bottom of it. Remember that nothing's impossible, okay? Nothing's impossible. The chances of you being here. Okay. This is where I'm telling you a solid truth. And it sounds so rude, but it's the truth. And I think we're all big enough to deal with it. So amongst the billions of little sperms that Daddy decided to shoot out, one made it. You. What are your chances of being here? 1 in a billion? So don't you think because of that alone, just that, you deserve to love yourself, you deserve to feel valid. Validate yourself. You don't need someone else to do it for you. You're great as you are. But you just got to accept, okay, so I have this disorder, I have that problem, I have that. Okay, so what's the best way to work with it? All right, that's cool. That's the best way to work with it. And then if you guys like, I can go into the conscious and subconscious and how to change the way you're thinking. It's just, you're changing the narrative in your brain. And so you just let me know. You can pop me an email on returntoself1@gmail.com. So that's return to self. I'm going to type it in the chat box. Return to self1@gmail.com. There we go. Send me an email, and if you want me to go through that as well with you guys, then I will do that, and we'll pick it up again next week on Thursday. So that's it for today. Love you lots. Mwah. Look after yourselves and have yourselves a good weekend. Whatever you might be doing, just be damn good at it and have a lot of fun with it, because that's all that matters, all right? And if it's really bad stuff, don't get caught. Okay, I didn't say that. Cheers, guys. I love you all. Thank you so much for joining. Bye for now. This will still be available, so you'll be able to see it afterwards. Okay. Ciao. Thanks, Lisa. Bye, love.